There's a war going on inside your body, and most people don't even know they've been drafted. Every single day, billions of cells are dividing, replicating. How do we? Repairing. And somewhere in that chaos, a few of them go rogue. That's how it starts. But it's not how it has to end. Because inside you, there's not just hope. There's hardware. There are kill switches built into your biology. Molecular levers that, when activated, can push a diseased cell into self-destruction. The question isn't whether you have the power to flip that switch. The question is whether you'll choose to. There is a nutrient found in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli sprouts that does more than nourish. It acts like a signal. It tells your DNA clean house, kill the threat, rebuild from strength. It's called sulforaphane, and it's one of nature's most potent tools against oxidative stress, inflammation, and abnormal cell growth. But the nutrient alone is not the cure. You are. Your behavior tells your biology what to do. When you fast, when you sleep deeply, when you breathe slowly, when you move daily, you are sending a message. You are either telling your body, let entropy take over, or you are telling your body, adapt, survive. So heal. This isn't about fear. This is about agency, about knowing that you're not waiting for a miracle. You are the miracle. You have the choice to create an internal environment where cancer cells cannot thrive, where they suffocate, where they drown in a sea of resilience you've built from the inside out. Flip the switch. Don't wait for the diagnosis to become the reason. Let the decision become the defense. You are not powerless. You are the signal. Leverage nutrient timing to influence cellular signaling by aligning your intake of key bioactive compounds with the body's natural metabolic cycles, which are deeply regulated by circadian rhythms and hormonal fluctuations across the day. When specific nutrients such as sulforaphane, omega-3 fatty acids, or polyphenols are consumed during periods of heightened cellular receptivity, often in the morning or post-fasting, they have a greater capacity to activate signaling pathways like AMPK and MTR, which play central roles in energy regulation, cell proliferation, and apoptosis. These pathways determine whether a cell enters a growth phase, initiates repair, or begins programmed self-destruction. By intentionally timing the intake of anti-cancer nutrients during windows when insulin sensitivity is elevated and inflammation is naturally lower, you enhance bioavailability and cellular uptake, which magnifies their impact on gene expression and intracellular defense mechanisms. This timing-based strategy strengthens the body's natural ability to detoxify, repair DNA, and suppress the early stages of tumor formation, while also minimizing nutrient waste and reducing systemic stress on digestion and metabolism. Activate your body's built-in surveillance system by enhancing the efficiency and responsiveness of immune cells that are specifically designed to detect and destroy abnormal, precancerous, or mutated cells before they can replicate uncontrollably. This internal defense network, composed of natural killer NK cells, cytotoxic T cells, dendritic cells, and macrophages, operates silently but vigilantly, scanning tissues for molecular markers that signal cellular stress, DNA damage, or infection. These cells rely on environmental cues, such as inflammation, nutrient status, sleep quality, and hormonal balance to function at their peak capacity. Nutrients like vitamin D3, zinc, selenium, and sulforaphane have been shown to amplify the expression of genes responsible for immune cell activation, antigen presentation, and the release of cytotoxic granules that target compromised cells for destruction. Regular physical activity, intermittent fasting, and controlled exposure to cold or heat stress further prime the immune system by inducing mild hormetic stress that sharpens surveillance sensitivity. Deep, restorative sleep ensures the recalibration of immune rhythm, allowing immune cells to patrol with precision, communicate effectively, and differentiate between healthy and aberrant tissue. The more consistently you engage in lifestyle choices that fortify this innate intelligence, the more capable your body becomes at neutralizing threats in their earliest and most vulnerable stage of development. Turn on gene expression through epigenetic modulation by using targeted nutrients, behavioral strategies, and environmental cues that influence how your genes are expressed without altering the underlying DNA sequence, allowing you to take active control over cellular behavior, inflammation, repair processes, and even cancer suppression. Epigenetics functions like a volume knob on your genes, determining which ones are turned up, silenced, or left in standby mode. And this modulation is heavily affected by compounds like sulforaphane, curcumin, EGCG, quercetin, and resveratrol, all of which interact with histone acetylation, DNA methylation, and non-coding RNAs to actimer suppressor genes and deactivate oncogenes. Lifestyle factors such as deep sleep, regular movement, exposure to natural sunlight, and even emotional regulation through practices like meditation or breathwork can alter epigenetic marks, thereby changing how cells age, repair, or respond to stress. The foods you eat, the toxins you avoid, and the rhythm of your daily habits become instructions sent to your epigenome, influencing whether protective pathways like NRF2 are engaged to enhance detoxification and antioxidant defenses, or whether harmful inflammatory genes are allowed to persist unchecked. By consciously applying repeated, biologically aligned behaviors over time, you begin to reprogram your cellular destiny, steering your biology away from degenerative patterns and toward regeneration, longevity, and resilience at the genetic level. And use fasting and feeding windows to trigger cellular housekeeping by strategically aligning periods of nutrient deprivation with the body's natural capacity for repair and regeneration, and eliminate damaged components through processes like autophagy and mitophagy, which are essential for preventing the accumulation of dysfunctional cells and cellular debris that can fuel inflammation and tumor growth. During fasting states, typically initiated after 12 to 16 hours without caloric intake, insulin levels drop, mTOR activity is suppressed, and AMPA is activated, shifting the body away from growth mode and into a deep maintenance state where cells begin to scan for misfolded proteins, damaged mitochondria, and irregular DNA that needs to be cleared or recycled. This internal recalibration not only conserves energy, but also promotes the death of senescent cells, which are often precancerous and secrete inflammatory factors into the tissue environment. Once feeding resumes, especially with nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory foods rich in phytonutrients and healthy fats, the body is primed to rebuild from a cleaner baseline, enhancing mitochondrial function, cellular integrity, and immune surveillance. Intermittent fasting protocols, time-restricted eating, or prolonged fasting under supervision allow for repeated waves of this deep biological housekeeping, reinforcing long-term metabolic health, increasing resilience to oxidative stress, and creating an internal terrain that is less hospitable to cancer initiation or progression by maintaining high cellular fidelity and adaptive efficiency. Regulate hormones to starve cancer of fuel by controlling the internal chemical messengers that dictate how cells grow, divide, and utilize energy, especially insulin, estrogen, and cortisol, which, when dysregulated, can create a metabolic environment that favors tumor development and progression. Cancer cells often hijack normal hormonal pathways to secure a continuous supply of glucose and growth signals, exploiting insulin and insulin-like growth factor 1 IGF-1 to drive unchecked proliferation and resist programmed cell death. By stabilizing blood glucose through low glycemic, nutrient-dense meals and reducing insulin spikes with practices like intermittent fasting, resistance training, and minimizing refined carbohydrates, you reduce the energy substrate that many aggressive tumors depend on. Estrogen-sensitive cancers, particularly in breast and reproductive tissues, are influenced by excessive circulating estrogens or poor estrogen metabolism, which can be modulated through liver, supportive foods like cruciferous vegetables, fiber, rich diets that improve hormone clearance, and compounds like DEM and calcium D glucarate that enhance estrogen detoxification. Chronic stress leads to elevated cortisol, which suppresses immune function, disrupts sleep, and promotes inflammation, all factors that weaken the body's surveillance system and provide cancer with more freedom to grow. So regulating this hormone through breathwork, circadian-aligned sleep, cold exposure, and mindfulness training becomes crucial for restoring hormonal balance. When these hormonal axes are consistently recalibrated through behavioral choices and targeted nutrition, the biochemical terrain within your body shifts from one that feeds malignancy to one that resists it, depriving abnormal cells of their fuel source and biological permission to thrive. Drive behavioral change with fearless precision and repetition by anchoring your actions not in motivation but in structure. By removing decision fatigue through pre-planned rituals that align with your biological rhythms and goals, and by accepting that the nervous system learns not through occasional intensity, but through daily consistency, which builds neural scaffolding that eventually automates those actions into identity. Whether it's preparing a nutrient-rich meal, engaging in breathwork to modulate stress hormones, or committing to intermittent fasting, the key lies in reducing friction to action by tying new behaviors to existing cues, like drinking a glass of sulforaphane-rich juice immediately after brushing your teeth in the morning, or using the first light of dawn as a trigger for movement or mindfulness. Fearless precision means eliminating ambiguity from your habits, knowing not just what to do, but exactly when, where, and how you'll do it each day so that willpower is never the limiting factor and excuses lose their power. Repetition rewires the brain through myelination and long-term potentiation, turning conscious effort into unconscious competence and eventually shaping a biological identity that acts in alignment with healing, strength, and resilience. By staying emotionally neutral toward discomfort and instead focusing on systems, sequences, and timing, you override old conditioning that favors inertia, gradually constructing a default operating state where discipline becomes automatic, where self-care becomes effortless, and where your internal environment begins to shift in response to the external changes you courageously chose to repeat.